So I think you start now.
Yeah.
Rupali ma'am, please.
Hello everyone and a very warm welcome to all of you. We are delighted to have you join us for the 64th webinar in the Pratiti-2024 series, Becoming Aware, organized by the Center of Excellence in Gaming and Simulation at Sri Vaishnav Vidyapith Vishwavidyalaya, Indore, India. Topic of today's webinar is learning from simulations and games, guidance from theory, concepts, and practice. And the resource person of this webinar is Dr. Vinod Damlikar, founder and director, Mentis, New Delhi, India. On behalf of the university and the Vice Chancellor, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to Mr. Dr. Vinod Damlikar and all the panel members, including the participants. To officially begin the session, first of all, I would like to introduce our speaker in this session. Dr. Vinod Damlikar is the founder of Mentis, a 20 years old firm in simulations, games, and experiential learning exercises in New Delhi, India. He has designed, developed, and facilitated games in business operations, business and corporate strategy, marketing, and brand management, and entrepreneurship in India, Dubai, and Thailand. He has taught postgraduate management students in finance, entrepreneurship, and business and corporate strategy. His simulation games have served management students, faculty, and career managers in financial accounting, management decisions, and business strategy. His research interests including design and development of simulation games, learning and player experiences, satisfaction, and self-efficacy. So without further ado, let's welcome Mr. Vinod Damblekar to begin the session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. I hope I'm visible.
Yes, sir.
Okay. For the general audience out here, I would like to say that I've been into games for 25, 26 years and into learning games for almost 22 years. Most learning games are called serious games nowadays. But I heard about that particular term only about 5, 6 years back, or maybe I seriously heard about it much more than merely casually hearing about it. And as I dug deeper into the meanings and associated relationship with other terms, I sensed that here was an opportunity that we could learn much more for. Let me quickly get into through my PPT. Once I started making my research and my PPT ready, I found that it was an ocean of ideas and practices and theories and so on. I will present to you as quickly as possible. Some of them I will run through them pretty quickly. Whenever you want me to stop, probably you can, and we can go back to a few slides where I might have focused less than what I ought to have done. My presentation here has 5 segments. In the introduction, I will explain what simulations and games are for you. This is for those who are not used to the terms. The second issue is the core of this topic. That's about learning. What exactly do we mean by learning? We could have different views on that. I have one as well. Then we could look at facilitation. Now, when you see the slides on facilitation and that of learning, you probably will find a few overlaps because in games, unless you facilitate learning, some learning or the most important learning does not come through. And for teachers, as many of you listeners would be, assessment is important because you need to tell the learner how much has learned, how much has not, and you need to find out in some way about the inadequacies of learning so that the learner that is a player would be able to correct himself. And finally, to that extent that we have time, I would like to tell you about the research that we have conducted across a variety of issues across the last 22 years or so. So let's start with the introduction part. First of all, we need to know the difference between simulation and case study. I know I'm going too deep into the roots, but I think if I can put in some foundational aspects out here, it'll be easier for the listeners to understand as well. So a simulation is basically a narrative or an expression or a minuscule projection or a story or a theme of something very large. That something large could be real or imaginary. It could be a story, it could be an epic, or whatever it is, it's a small form of something large. We are used to something called a case study. A case study is probably, if you'd like to look at it as a special case of a simulation, where the representation or the storyline is very tight. That means it begins somewhere, it ends somewhere, and you're not really sure that you can challenge what has happened, but it has limited scope. Limited with respect to what? With respect to the simulation. Normally speaking, the simulation is a replica which has a beginning and an end. So therefore, you cannot go beyond. But therefore, we need to look at things like something large, something that we don't understand, something that is very complex, such as, for example, a black hole or the atomic structure of the smallest things that we are used to. So therefore, we can use simulations to understand these things better. So therefore, what's a game? A game is a set of interactions at its most basic level between people. Animals also play games, or you could play with a machine. You could play a pen and paper with, such as, for example, Sudoku, and therefore try to find out whether it helps you pass the time, to challenge yourself, or to outbeat somebody or outthink somebody. So that's a game. It's fun. And when you mix the simulation and the game together, you have quite a powerful device whereby you can learn, you can have fun, you can challenge yourself, you can challenge anybody else as well. And you have virtually everything under your command. That means the game technically has a beginning and an end, but you can explore far more things because the game has variety, uncertainty, a challenge, mystery, and so on, which typically a simulation or a case study may not have. If you look at the games that I've mentioned at the bottom of this page, you see cricket. Cricket is a game. Cricket is not a simulation game. Chess is a game. Chess is a simulation because it replicates a battle between two armies. So therefore, chess is a simulation game. Hockey again is only a game. It does not simulate anything. If you can think of how cricket and hockey simulate something, please let me know. I would like to know about it. Then you have snakes and ladders. I'll show you on the next page how snakes and ladders could be looked at as a simulation game. Monopoly is a game where we can pretend to be people who can buy up assets and earn incomes and so on, so that you can earn or you can learn how business is done. Then you have a Catan. What's Catan? There you are. That's Catan. That's a Catan board where you can take steps or take decisions in terms of building cities and settlements with the use of roads and so that. It's fun. Catan boards have been used to understand management decisions as well. This entire group is a group of my friends. I thought I'll let you know them as well. And then this is the typical simulation and I'm sorry, the snakes and ladders board. You are familiar with the snakes and ladders board, which shows only snakes and ladders. But here is a board that talks about health and Medicare. I strongly suspect that David will probably challenge this or maybe support this, whereby we can learn something from here. Look at some of these ladders. For example, the number 21 at bottom right. That ladder is starting from 7. Suggests that if you can do blood pressure control and so on, it can come from reduced salt intake. So therefore, there's a message here. Similarly, you can take a snake. Look at 22 and 35. 22 talks about high blood pressure levels, and the result is aerated drinks, fruit juices, maida items, and all that. So therefore, this is a game where you can learn from. And it's also simulation because it simulates, call it a medical system. Here you are depiction of what a case could be with respect to game simulations. Now, this is your view, my view, his view. Here is another view where the serious games and simulations could be a part of the other. You could also have simulations as a part of games. Some have seen it as part of something else as well. I leave it to you to judge what they could be differently. What are the elements of games that we have to look at which could help us learn and understand? Well, like everything else, it has a beginning and end. It uses resources like tokens, or as in hockey or cricket, you have something physical to hold on to. You require a playing board, maybe a game board or the entire cricket ground. You have players. Within the teams, the players collaborate, and outside the teams clash with each other as competitors. Then, of course, you have rules. Don't do this, do that, etc., etc. You have the LBW rule in cricket. You have the offside rule in football and hockey. I think I'm not very sure. But then there are penalties. They are barriers which actually encourage you to plan your resources such that you can win, and therefore from the winning you can learn and understand. And then you have the measurements and scores that keep track of your progress of the players in the game. And then special cases such as do you need rewards for winning? Do you have an audience when you play? Or do you require media attention and so on? And then, of course, the special segment that I have been exposed to for the last 20 odd years are serious games, games meant for learning. Play is a source of learning. Play, in short, is about giving an opportunity to the player to do whatever he wants within the set of rules and the resources given to him. Play enables him to stretch himself mentally more than physically, and that changes him. The challenges help him become engaged with what is happening. He becomes absorbed with the challenge and also what his competitors are doing. He learns from his collaborators, that is his team members. And sometimes the game itself takes him into a mental region where he's too caught up, he does not have any sense of time, and he's thrilled to be able to win. It's a sensory world all of his own where he gets trapped and he learns and he is excited by the fact so much that he wants to come back for more. That is a quick session on what simulations and games were, especially what was play. What do we learn? What do you mean by learning? I know that as teachers and students, we are used to the fact that study is learning, but there may be more. I'll give you some various aspects here so that you can quickly understand what I'm speaking about. Learning is about something new. Novelty is learning. You discover something that's new, and therefore that's learning. Did you learn something about merely a description, or is it something about an event? Did you learn about how this thing became that? Did you learn something of an ability? Did you learn how to make coffee? And so these are all new things which you did not know before. So if you're being exposed to something new, something what you did before, I think it would be difficult to call that learning. A lot of learning is we don't know whether we've learned. I think somebody has to prick us or probe us and say, you know that, I can explain it to you. Or maybe I need to be able to be exposed to an activity where I apply my learning and then I say, I know, which means I prove to myself that I know because I tested my learning, my understanding against a problem. But the last line, the bottom line is important. Once you learn, you don't go back to a particular period, maybe even if it's 5 minutes before or yesterday, and you don't want to say that I want to unlearn. So unlearning is very difficult. I'm sure it's impossible, but I'll stay at the difficult part. Benefit of uses for learning. It's a safe place to learn. You learn on your own. You don't have to be supervised, except in terms of scores. You need to be supervised if you might cheat at games. But generally speaking, you are so excited that you play on your own, and every challenge makes you put in more time and energy into wanting to play that game. Uh, Games tend to compress the time. I mean, you could play 6 months of or 1 year of an economic event and play it around and learn about it in maybe about an hour of play. For example, that game Catan I talked about, you could speak about real life efforts which might take many years to be able to. I mean, how long does it take to put up a city? Maybe 4 or 5 years. In Catan, you can do it in minutes and understand how it is done as well. Games can go beyond languages. I mean, what is the language that you use in Sudoku or in Scrabble? It is just limited to English. So then, although no difficulties involved. More importantly, I say that all the time, games are fun. So you can use it for assessment and trying to find out what did you do wrong. And finally, you can give certificates, give marks where student and syllabuses, etc., come into the picture. Learning from games is an aha experience. You come out of it raising your hands and say, I won. If you can do this, you can raise your hand. If you can stand up because you cannot sit down because the excitement is too high, then I think you're in a learning experience. A learning experience need not have to come from a game alone. It can be anything that happens spontaneously without notice, without being told about it. You see a film and something happens there which you didn't expect. You also could stand up and say, aha. I mean, players sitting around watching a hockey or football match, they do that all the time. How do you understand? You understand as being the destination of learning. So here I'm trying to look at learning as a transaction or a collection of processes, and understanding as the destination. I'm sure we can fiddle around with this definition again and again. But how do you learn or how do you understand? Well, I think as I put it out there, it's a complex mix of play, which is basically interactions, attention that you pay to the game, being totally involved in what is happening, looking back at what happened. I would add here repetition of whatever you do. When you repeat something, you become better at it, and therefore you want to play much more so that you become even better at it. Benjamin Bloom has been one of my favorite learning models ever. I've been looking at this model for the last 18, 20 years or so, a little less than my gaming experience. And the pyramid on the right is the one that you have to look at. That's a later model. It broadly says that learning could be 6 different aspects, such as remembering, which is what we do in class. We remember something, sit for an exam, and we are deemed to have understood it, but probably we have not. A second issue could be understanding, which is a little higher, where whatever you read in the textbook, you go outside and see many other versions of that or examples of it, and then you say, I know more, I can explain it, I can describe it to you. A third could be, well, applying that knowledge, which is why I think we are here, we go to school and learn or college. We need to be able to apply that in terms of solving a problem or whatever. Then analysis is basically looking back on what you've done or explaining something as to how it happened in terms of history, geography, chemical makeup or whatever. There is the evaluation part where you have seen so many things, so many repetitions of this particular process that you become an expert in assessing that in terms of how it is not good or good, how it is right or not right, and evaluating it and comparing and putting something, declaring it to be better than the others. Finally, of course, creating. That is where the creator, the innovator is placed. And that is where it is the highest form of learning, where you can do something that has not been done before. where you can see something that's not been seen before. So converting this into words, this is what I put here. Recognition and description repetition is something that you see at the study level of learning. You get into explanation and interpretation as an understanding part where you prove that you understood the second level. The third is about using it. When you say that you know how to do it, you prove it. When you use it, we get to know more, understand more. As you hear the science of repetition and how it adds to your understanding is also seen. The fourth is about synthesis and linkages, analysis, and so on. It helps you broaden your understanding about the world in general. Fifth is evaluation, assessment, and so on, where you apply a judgment and say why this is better than the other. At the high levels, such as 3, 4, 5, and 6, we see teachers, we have judges, we have panelists like us, and so on. The highest, of course, is level that of creativity and innovation, that of the creator. After having seen this, I thought there must be a bottom of this page. I like to learn because it helps me solve problems. I like to learn because, of course, it helps me have fun. I think you can see it at the bottom right. Let me come to something called learning from experience, which Kolbe said that in 1985. Experiential learning is at the root of all games, because all games, every game is an experience. So this is what we do. We look at an experience, reflect upon it, explain it, and build conclusions, and then we apply it. Sometimes the conclusions are wrong, so that therefore we go back to that experience, correct it. Okay. I'm sorry, I didn't explain that umbrella to you. You see a lot of clouds in the air, and maybe one day it rains. Maybe you see it a second time, a third time, then you realize that it rains every time there are clouds. So you take your umbrella when you go out. But maybe once or twice when you do this in April, it doesn't rain. There are clouds, it rains, but it doesn't rain when you take out your umbrella. So you correct your conclusion, and maybe you wait for the June, July months when it consistently rains when there are clouds. So you change your thinking, your understanding, depending upon the experience you have had. How to influence learning? This is Bandura, my second most favorite learning model, research scientist. He's told us many things. You can look at the words very quickly. It is to where learners pay attention to something, especially with detail. A second issue is about retention. You retain only when you're interested, which means you need to be engaged in what you do. The third is about the ability to replicate something, which is to do with explaining what you saw. Fourth is driven by your keenness with what you would like to do. I put it down there at the bottom as a formula. You observe, you imitate, repeat, and repeat, modify, and therefore, etc. Going further, this is an understatement of the word that unless you see and unless you copy it and apply, you would not learn, which means you need to cause something called reinforcement, repeating what you did so that you become good at it. Once you're good at it, you have the opportunity to look back on yourself and find out, are you doing it the right way? So that also is a kind of reflection. I'll go further. I'm at a sense of loss of time. Okay. Constructive theory of learning, I'm going to compress this very quickly. It is built on the idea that you put 2 and 2 together and come to 555. It means you need to be able to look deep into your experiences, look deep into your observations, and see whether you can conclude differently. For example, I concluded that I have 2 other reasons, outcomes for learning that I'm looking forward to. One is to solve problems. Second is to have fun. Now, anybody could do that. I interpreted the cobs with an umbrella and rain and cloud. So therefore, if you can add things together, you can find examples. I think you learn faster and better. So therefore, you have a constructive learning where you create self-directed learners. This is very difficult to pronounce, but I'll do it, try and my best. Csikszentmihalyi, that L is silent. He said that he explained how motivation could be explained in terms of engagement. That arrow there, that points to flow. So he came up with the idea of flow, explaining it as a point where the player or individual could be so engaged with what he's doing that he loses sense of time. And he says that this can happen only when, look at the x-axis below, high skills match high challenges. I dispute this a little. If my skills are low and if my challenges are low, I am reasonably certain that I am in the flow as well. I'm sure I must be need to understand this better, but that is my understanding at this point in time. But we cannot dispute the fact that when I'm challenged with something, and if my level of skills are right, I'm so engrossed in what I'm doing. I wish you could apply this in a game also, this particular idea. Yes, but what are mistakes? Mistakes are only something that happened to you which you didn't expect. So if you can explain that way, I think you have lots of cause of not feeling guilty, but learning from that kind of error. That's just from in terms of learning. So in games, you have a facilitator who guides you in terms of how something could be understood, because you do not understand all, nor you have the capacity to reflect when you are learning alone. How do facilitators affect learning? So it is to get the learner to be able to look back on what has happened. It is to build attitudes, positive attitudes to look back on, especially on error. We are scared to look back on mistakes we did. It helps the person, or rather facilitator helps the players to be able to help learning without really too much of reliance on lectures and tests and grades. It is event based. Finally, of course, the discovery that comes when you're looking at yourself and you understand that this I should not have made. I did this because of this. I make the connections. I do constructivist, as I just told you in one of the earlier slides. Interactions, of course, when we are able to play in a game with a lot of collaborators with us, that is team members, we learn very quickly. What are these game elements? This is probably the heart of the session. How do we cause autonomous learning without the assistance of others? We want triggers that help us learn. Csikszentmihalyi, who spoke about flow, has given us a few ideas. That is, we need to be challenged in such a way that our skills meet the challenge. We need to be excited, and giving challenges, I think would be a good way to do that. If we can raise the level of problems one step at a time in a manner that's called scaffolding, I think will learn faster. I'm sure we will learn faster. If we can learn in the company of others, our learning is very, very fast, maybe 10x or 100x as well. If we repeat something, I know all of us we have heard something called rote learning. I like rote learning because it makes me better and better and better. Rote learning is not really learning. I think it's rote study. It's called rote learning by mistake. But if I do something repeatedly, I learn more. And then, of course, I want somebody to tell me where have I gone wrong. So that's where this feedback comes through. But where there's no feedback by other people, the facilitator could do that. But if there's nobody, probably we can use the data of the game to tell us where you have gone wrong. And of course, all feedback, all learning is there to help me understand better, make myself more competent and more aware for the next game. This is a picture, this is an image from, I think last year or a year before last when we played for IIM Nagpur. There's that girl out there standing. She can't sit. She's too excited to play. She can't sit. There's a chair. There are many chairs behind. She can't because she has to stand. It's too exciting. A game has to be like this because that's the only way that people get engrossed and therefore pay attention to what is being learned. But learning will come later. We also talked about fun several times. So therefore, I searched for the theory of fun and I found Costa 2013 speaking about this. He links fun with learning, with discovery, the act of solving puzzles. And therefore, he says learning is a drug, which means if you give challenges to your student or your learner, which is gradually improves or becomes bigger, you entrap him with the challenge in such a way that is perennially caught there so that he can learn more and more. And he says, give me more. So therefore, fun is about where challenge meets skill and you are caught up in solving problems all the time. Some of us know about this, so I need to make this clear to everybody. Pedagogy is about, some call it the science of teaching. Basically, the lecture and everything is associated with it. But andragogy is about how adults learn. Adults learn differently. All of your adults, so I'm sure you'll agree with me, you will learn only if you want to. Otherwise, you might be listening to me even through this lecture, disagreeing with what I've said, saying that you've heard most of these things, etc., etc. Adults want to solve a problem. Adults want to be very clear that it should be challenging to them, otherwise they will not learn. They will not listen to me. So therefore, they are looking forward to with their full authority of the adult, and which is different from students who come to class and say, okay, tell me, I'll listen to you. So we need to be able to present our games differently to adults who play. And I often find that children are older than 10, probably become adults by then. Here are some examples of games that we've done and how did we help people understand. This is the facilitation part. So these are results of 10 teams. The team numbers are at the top in the first row called competitions. And these are the results at the end of the session. It was a course for 30 hours. At the end of 30 hours, what is your position? So we have sales, we have revenues, we have price per car, wealth, etc. All of these things given. It's a mix of both decisions made and performance. For example, decisions made could be price per car or advertisement, and the results could be sales and revenues. Now, this is too much of information. What does the facilitator have to do? Well, here is the other chart from this chart itself. What we did here was we reduced this to ranks. That is the second bottom half of this page, where we put them in terms of 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 being the highest and so on. And then now we started asking them to compare what the number ones did as compared to the number 10s. I'll show you the next page, which is even more clearer. Look at the red squares or rectangles. So we asked them to focus on the number ones and the 10s to find out how the ones behaved differently from 10 and allowed the students or the players to draw their own conclusions. Therefore, they were able to find out that this ought not to have been done, or that was done because that was why you received this kind of performance from the learner. We had at least half a dozen or more of these items here on this page itself, and it could cover a lot of business issues, ideas, and themes in just this one short paper. To understand better, you could offer to give data in terms of graphs, pie charts. I like line graphs and graphs like this because we could reduce a mass of data like you saw 2 or 3 slides earlier to just a few lines on a page. We once had a game called Shadi, where we looked at the process as a sort of a project where you started from the left went to the extreme right. How was an average Indian process performed? So it was described to you in about 7 or 8 different stages, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. We have 9 here. So the pujari is where it decides the wedding, the date, the venue, etc., etc. And the last stage on the right side is the wedding. So we use this to help people understand how to look at a project and how to describe and put it on paper so that other people could also understand. The numbers you can see are the number of days it would take for example, at the left pujari, it would take 5 days for him to fix the wedding date. Now, this is a simple project. I mean, to get to know, once you know about simple project, you can look at projects that can build say, dams, for instance. Learning is conscious thinking, deliberate thinking. That means this contrasts with the view that learning comes to you with experience. I mean, 20 years later, you'll be able to look back and all that. I think Kolp fights that view by saying that learning is something where you need to make that effort to be able to draw conclusions. Conclusions is the result uh, in terms of learning, what I call understanding. And of course, its various applications in terms of using to solve problems and so on. You could have 2 or 3 or 10 different conclusions on same bit of data, depending upon who is playing the game. And probably all those conclusions are right because of the context in which the student or the learner is playing the game, and depending on what he has seen or what he has studied. And it's good to have these different conclusions in conflict with each other, because then we can see other things as well. Elizabeth Lay is missing today as amongst the panelists. I wish she had been there. This was picked up from her most recent book. It's about 2 months or 3 months old. But there was a chapter that she had shared with us. So therefore, I have reduced it to this one particular page here. The facilitator guide is a guide who helps the learner, that is a player, to acquire competence. Basically, therefore, it is to help understand how to do something or how to know about something. But she takes it further in the second line. He says it is to guide those who know about riding a bike to acquire the skills involved in actually doing so. Now, that's quite a leap from sitting and looking at a bike and actually sitting on the bike and pedaling away. And lastly, of course, to extend and enlarge the learner's focus to deeper levels of awareness. Now, here, awareness, I mean the same sense as understanding, with emphasis on questions, analysis, and evaluations. Basically, helping you convert your curiosity into something useful for you and meaningful for you. How could I miss Tyagi? Tyagi is a giant in the simulations and gaming world. And I picked this up barely in a very timely manner. He had just put it up maybe about a week back, fortunately for me. Debriefing, which is a part of facilitation, often in some cases, debriefing is one of the last stages in a game. So debriefing discussions means you speak, I speak, he, all of us speak. Help the participant reflect on an earlier experience and derive insights. Reflections and insights are the key words here. And then he talks about emotional rich, experientially rich, emotionally intense, and cognitively complex learning activity. It means you're deep into it, you're totally engaged. That is where the interaction between the facilitator and the learner can come in. And of course, that is where you help people understand not only more, but he leaves the hall. Probably that is the objective that we have had when you play the game. The student has to leave the hall with a lot more questions than the number of answers he has collected in this game. We want him to be curious and an autonomous learning for life. Assessment. I'm going to go through this very quickly. I don't have time. Here it is. We are back to something called reflection. This is from a paper of 1999. I missed the author's name. How does a facilitator also look on, and what does he do? Well, he looks at 3, 4 issues, such as, for example, he asks what happened uh, in the past, what did you see? So therefore, the focus is on data. The second is about what did you do, or what happened over there? How did this become that, and so on. Therefore, we are looking at processes, we are looking at actions, and so on. We are looking at an important thing called errors and events. Errors are important because they provoke and probably they annoy the player, embarrass him as well. Enough for him to be able to think differently and say, I want to learn how to avoid it. So therefore, if the facilitator focuses on errors, I think he might be able to get a larger response from the player than otherwise. Lastly, of course, you could look at interactions between the team members and the competitors. You could get diverse reactions, which again is a source of learning. This is the number of questions that I have for the games that I run. At the end of the game, we have an hour and a half where every participant makes a quick self-appraisal about what he did, what he saw, how did he react to something, and so on. For example, this is at the end of a 30-year caption, like a game that we ran for a business school. So we asked, what did you see? Observations, for example. Then what did you do? What decision did you do? How did you make the decisions? What was the background of the decisions, and so on. Third, interactions between people. What did you learn from them? How did you teach them? How did you attend to the conflict? Then a summary of what have you learned, what mistakes of observation, competition, etc. What did you take from this course? How will you apply it out there? Finally, looking at something special, statements, special events, etc. That could be 5. But we are focusing mostly on the first 3 or 4 so that we can get the student in the right frame of mind so that he becomes curious for life. I'm going to run this. This is a self-appraisal for student at the end of the program, very recent, maybe about 2 months back. I just want to know, is it audible? Hello?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Yes, sir, it's audible.
So we have so many competitors in the environment. Price has product very low, only people for it. But actually, pricing is low makes it more space so that we can get more revenue. So all these things that we use in the real life business and also for my own company.
That was at the end of a 30-hour capstone program. There were 118 or 119 students in 2 different batches. We concluded that virtually a month back, 26th of October. Every student had to present what they have learned. They had a set of questions which you just saw on a screen about 2 slides back. Okay, sorry, these are questions more for you than for me. Let me get it. I'll stop here. If you have questions about research, I'll get into it. I think I offered you a lot more ideas. I would like you to go through that. And if not, I'll go through the last phase of it, which is research. Please go ahead. Thank you. Some questions provoked. I put it up here. Please go ahead. I'm stopping here for questions from you. Thank you.
Hi, Vinod. And there are some questions in the chat, Vinod. Maybe you want to have a look at that.
I'll check it out.
Yep.
Oh, good. That many questions. Okay. Where do I start from the bottom? Is learning a method of cultivating and nurturing the quality of life? This evoking joy. Yes, learning is joy. Learning is fun. Learning is discovery. There's nothing short of fun I mean, every moment I suspect a lot of joy is from learning that we heard something, we saw something, we experienced something we didn't experience before. So a lot of joy is in terms of novelty as well. We got to know something new for the first time. A question about the new Bloom taxonomy, about remembering. Is learning a phenomenon of consciousness of retrieving information from a higher conscious perspective from lower conscious perspective? Thus, are there elements of new information emergence with the relation to the higher conscious experience, or is that learning already present in the higher conscious perspective? I think both are possible. I think it is to do with where are you now? The present moment is the one I think that is provoking you into suddenly being conscious about some element, something that you want to do or something that you heard before. Maybe it is possible that you may have to recall something and apply it, which is, of course, the core of reflection. So I think all that is possible. I think it all depends upon how far back the player wants to go, either with the impressions in his game or with his personal life and other action that is taken in his experience as well. Student engagement is also a big benefit, of course. Learning from games, learning as games, learning off games, of course. Once you get students engaged, remember they learn on their own. They do not require anybody around them. No adult, no teacher, no book, no syllabus, nothing of that. You don't even have to give them a slide. All you give them is a problem to solve, a problem that matches their skills, and that's it. You leave them alone. I have hundreds of examples. I don't have the time here to explain how that has happened to us. Sometimes very without our control. I mean, you don't try to control somebody who's playing a game. You let them go. Mr. Will, do I understand this correctly? The game proposes situations where one can look at unwanted habits and the effects of such and compare them with habits that are considered virtuous, assessing and experiencing the effect of virtues in life. 1 minute, I'll read that again. The game proposes situations where we are getting into ethics and morality. I think we should leave that to the facilitator to explain. I don't know whether I would be competent to explain that. But if the facilitator has decided that we should have this game, I don't know whether I would be competent in questioning him and say, you should not do that.
Let me rephrase the question. It was about when you showed this image of these boxes with snakes and ladders, and there were solutions and problems. That is.
Yes, they were basically practices, good practice and bad practices in terms of health and medical habits, asking you to stop salts or sugars or oils, etc., and engage in healthy behavior such as exercises and so on. And most of those practices were rooted in how do I put it? Acknowledged medical practice. So they were not really moral guides. They were actually medical recommendations. You call it prescriptions if necessary.
Yeah, I think it was brilliant. I think that kind of methodics is needed here, at least here in the Western world, in medical practices, so that it allows patients to see that, okay, I'm having these and these behaviors in my life, I'm having these and these diseases, and then I could simply, or the facilitator, doctor could say, how about you try that and that and that behavior and we see what happens. Very simple.
This game would be good for 10 or 12-year-olds to understand what is a good practice, what is a practice not to be followed. It would not fit an older audience because once we become older, we do not like to be told what to do.
Well, that's where games come in.
That's why games come in. Andragogy comes in. In andragogy, allow the adult to learn on his own. Let him draw the conclusion that smoking is bad or whatever. But if you tell him smoking is bad, he says, "Who are you to tell me?"
Actually, I smoke a couple of cigarettes per day, and I have come to the conclusion that if I have enough of the good habits in my life, then performing some of the so-called bad habits are actually not so unhealthy for me, because they put me in a state of mind where I can reflect on bad habits in my life, thus learn, so that when I have smoked my cigarette, I emerge with new knowledge about life that is more valuable than the effects of that smoking incident.
So smoking becomes a mindfulness exercise.
Yes, exactly. That's what I tell myself, at least.
Okay. Okay, but I think in a game or in experience, I think we should finally agree that the adult is always right.
Just a quick comment, Vinod, and a question. I think, first of all, I really have to commend your presentation. Very insightful, and your coverage of, a lot of material very succinctly covered. So thank you for that. I was picking up on your points you were making, that play is the source of learning. I couldn't agree more, right? The more you get engaged, the more important it becomes. And as you were saying that, I was thinking of some examples that I've come across where people can actually learn the wrong thing in the play because that's how the game or the simulation shows it to them. And then you end up doing the wrong thing, and it can be disastrous. So, for example, in a flight context, you have flight simulators, and if they don't teach you the right thing, you can learn the wrong thing, and then you can go and crash an aircraft and kill people, right? And the other point you made that is you sort of mentioned how it's very hard to unlearn. Once you've gone through it, it's very hard to unlearn, because by the very fact of learning, we are extending the models that we have. The abstraction of those models is getting richer. And I think one of the points you made about debriefing, you mentioned, so I can't remember the slide, you talked about you have to mention him, and about the concept of debriefing. And that to me stood out as that's absolutely fundamental, because that's where the reflection happens. And it's through that reflection that you might correct. You can't unlearn, but you can then correct and refine the model of what you learned to make sure it's closer to the right model. And I just wanted to sort of, does that resonate with you, Vinod? Any thoughts on those points about reflection being the way to consider the unlearning aspect, and how important that debrief element is, especially the more critical it becomes?
It is. Thank you, Devi. I
Yeah.
think the fact that we cannot unlearn has been confirmed by a well-known experiment called the Hawthorne experiment. It is very difficult to unlearn because all the time you are growing older and you are growing closer to an adult status. And the more adult you are, you think, I am in control of my situation. I am right. I was right yesterday, day yesterday, and this morning as well. If you want me to unlearn, you give me a challenge, I will solve it for you. I will conclude from there, and then I will unlearn, but not before.
Yes. Very good point. I'll stop talking there, because I can see there are a couple more questions in the Q&A bit, and I think one of them is alluding to research, which you were going to talk about, Vinod. So
Did I miss that?
it's in the Q&A thing, Vinod. You have to open the Q&A.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't see that.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmed. Can you explain how to maintain the consistency while learning? Consistency while learning. Consistency should not be an objective. There is some expression that says going down a rabbit hole. I do that pretty often. I find a word, then find another word, then follow it up, just like that. Suddenly, I'm awfully inconsistent. I forgot what I started out with. Then to come back takes me a lot of time. Everything gets postponed, and but it's fun. I found more rabbit holes. I found rabbits in them, and I found something new which I did not know before. I think if you're learning on your own, I don't think you should be considerate or about being consistent. I think you should be considerate about, am I learning something new? Is there fun in what I discovered? I think that should be a topic. Don't bother about consistent. And how do you mean consistent? When you are searching for something for the first time, you're not going to look at your watch and say, oh my God, it's 11 p.m. at night. I need to go to bed. Because that's what Csikszentmihalyi talks about in terms of flow. You lose sense of time. So when you lose sense of time, because you're doing something, you're not thinking about consistency at all. Mr. Kulbhushan, my research involves using video games to help, where I first aim to do the gamification analysis of the game and then incorporate biofeedback into it. I use Octalysis, but it may be more intensive for simple game. Do you have any reference to another simpler gamification analysis framework for simpler games? I cannot give you a ready answer for that, Mr. Kulbhushan. Probably we could talk and we could find something similar. I wish I could show you my research. I had some 9 or 10 papers and the results to show you here. But time, we are out of it. We don't have much time left. So therefore, I stopped at the end of the 4th session. Anytime, please contact me. I'll help you out. Mr. Kulbhushan?
I have a comment,
Yeah,
if you
sure.
if you may, with relation to unlearning. I have been studying methods of unlearning as maybe there's a saying that true learning, only true learning is unlearning, so they say. And the method I've been using, of course, you need to be able to assess your thinking and behavior. And what I've been using there is that when one reflects of our own thinking and actions, then there's an opportunity. It's kind of a merciful opportunity, so that when one sees that, okay, this thought system I've been using has errors, then instead of trying to influence the thought system, I just forgive myself for using it, and poof, it's gone.
So probably unlearning has a small dose of morality in it, right and wrong, a feeling of guilt. Maybe that's why it's called unlearning. And
Maybe that too,
otherwise, it's probably exactly what you said. Unlearning is
also,
learning.
but also, eh, I've been practicing, or I've been using these methods from A Course of Miracles, which is a metaphysical teachings, and it helps me to forgive. If I feel sin, guilt, or fear, I know that, okay, now I'm utilizing a thought system that isn't fully conscious. So when I realize that, okay, I'm experiencing sin, guilt, or fear, I stop, look at it, and then I forgive it, forgive myself for using a system that is malfunctioning.
So, is that small dose of morality coming in?
It's not morality. It's mercifulness. I don't judge. I don't judge the thought system. I look at it and I see, okay, this is not where I want to go. I'm not telling it if it's good or bad or what it is, because if I comment on it, then the system activates and starts behaving even more wickedly. So I just realized that, okay, this is a system I don't want to use, and then I realized that it is me who have created or activated this system in me, and I just forgive it and let go of it.
That's good. It's a very fair way of looking at learning and understanding something new.
Yes, thanks.
Thank you. I think I have a new question. Thanks, David. I saw your message. Thank you.
So, is there any other question? Okay, I think no more questions are there. So thank you, Dr. Vinod, for the enlightening and thought-provoking session on this interesting topic. And we deeply appreciate your valuable insights on this. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Jigyasu Dubey, the coordinator of the Center of Excellence in Simulation and Gaming, to deliver the words of thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Rupali. Firstly, I am thankful to Dr. Vinod Damblekar ji for accepting our invitation to conduct this 64th webinar of the series, Pratiti Becoming Aware. He is the main behind this webinar series along with Dr. Dhar in, I think, 2020. That was ISAGA conference, and SSSS was supposed to organize that conference, but due to COVID, it is postponed. At that time, Vinodji insisted we should do something and start this webinar series. So we started that webinar series, and this is the 64th session of the series. So credit goes to you, sir, for this webinar series. I'm very much thankful and our sincere gratitude to you. Dr. Vinod presented methods and techniques of learning from simulation and gaming, and also discussed experiential learning as a model and method that are appropriate for simulation and gaming. Our sincere gratitude to International Simulation and Gaming Association, ISAGA, for the collaboration and support in organization of Pratiti-2024. Our sincere gratitude to Dr. Upinder Dhar, Honorable Vice Chancellor of our university, for their continuous guidance and encouragement. Our sincere thanks to today's panelists, Mr. David Rotley, Mr. Vile, Mr. Jawar Balla ji, Dr. Ramesh Sharma ji, Dr. Guru Prasad ji, Dr. Saurabh Jain, and all other panelists who are present, and also participants who make this webinar successful. I am thankful to Dr. Rupali Bharti and all the members of the Center of Excellence in Simulation Gaming SSSS for their support. Special thanks to the IT team of the university for their kind support. Thank you very much. Thanks, Vinodji, once again.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Everybody to participate very vigorously today.
Yes, sir.
Thank
So,
you, Dr. Vinod. It was a nice talk.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Very
thank
pedagogical.
Vinodji for excellent presentation.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you,
Yeah.
Dr. Sharma. Good to see you here.
Jay, namaste.
Thank you all of you for participating today, and we hope you found this session enriching and inspiring. So stay tuned for more exciting webinars on gaming and simulation in the Pratiti 2024 series. Have a great day. Thank you so
And
much.
all the participants are requested to fill the feedback form to get the certificates. And feedback form, link for the feedback form is given in the chat box.
Thank you. Thank you, JB. Thank you, David.
Thank you. Thanks, Vinod. See you then. Bye now.
Thank you. All the best. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Vinodji.
Thank you, Dubey. Bye.
Thank you, Vinod sir.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.